title of this talk was because I had no frickin' idea what I was going to call it. And that was finally suggested to me, minus the identity at the end. If you're not familiar with that, e to the power of I times pi minus 1 equals 0. The four most fundamental constants in math all put into one equation called Euler's identity. It's absolutely beautiful. So that reduces down to 19,100 minus 1, which reduces down to, oh, yeah, a lame joke. That's awkward. I'm a geek. What can I say? I'm a geek. I have dumb jokes. I'm also a dad. I have dad jokes. So it's going to be just boring. Nobody's going to laugh. Don't feel bad. I'm used to it. I've got a daughter. This should be Larry. No bones about it. I am, we're scraping the barrel here with me. It should be Larry up here. 25th anniversary of this event. There's no question about it. It's my understanding he had a schedule conflict, but so we did not get him, which is unfortunate. But obviously, he's the one who's given us this beautiful gift. I really appreciate it. So, Larry, if you're out there, thank you very much. Please say hello to your lovely wife, Gloria, your children. We really appreciate everything you've done for us. Sorry. Most of you know me, I think, probably. Curtis Poe, better known as Ovid, with allaroundtheworld.fr. You won't see much of the site. It's just a placeholder site. Our consulting firm, we just get business word of mouth and a lot of repeat customers. If you ever need help with consulting, it doesn't have to be in Perl. We've done quite a number of different languages, but obviously we do a lot of Perl, more Python now than we used to, which has been very fun, to be honest. My personal website's at curtispoe.org. The only reason I registered that is I got tired of people making fun of my website being on github.io, so okay, fine, I'll do that. And curtis.poe@gmail.com. You can contact me anytime you want to. I love chatting with folks. I'm also very busy. I get a lot of email, so if I don't respond to you right away, please feel free to follow up. I apologize. Legal stuff, copyright, 2024, all around the world. I decided not to put that at the bottom of every single slide because that just clutters things. And I do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors in particular for this event. WebPros, which is cPanel, Pleska, and WHMCS. Most of you are probably familiar with them as cPanel, one of the wonderful folks who's helped us out here. Deriv, they've been around for 25 years. They are, they do a lot of work with Perl. They're a trading company, and they sponsored a lot of great stuff in Perl, or they've tested a lot of great stuff in Perl. So a lot of the work with ObjectPad, the precursor for Karina, they've used heavily in-house, which is why we know, part of why we know what's good, what works, what doesn't. And there's also Grant Street Group. Obviously, they've been around for quite some time. Most of you folks are familiar with them. They're cloud-based governance solutions for many financial things. If you see anyone who works with any of these, please talk to them, find out what they do, how you can help them. Maybe you can get a job. But without them, we would not have Cognitive. So I'm very grateful for them. They're an important part of it. They're giving back to the community also. And quick disclaimer. Trying to dig in to Perl history, going back to 1999, is kind of difficult. And as I was putting this together, digging through archive.org, trying to find photos, trying to find information, it's very hard. I didn't keep as careful of notes as I did, so if anything's not credited, I'm going to call it fair use and hope I get away with that. It's not an intentional slight on anyone. And also, yesterday I dead named someone when I was talking to them. And I didn't mean to. It's just someone I've known for decades. And I apologize if I do anything like that. Over 25 years, I won't necessarily know if someone else has chosen a new name. I do not wish to be disrespectful about that. But it's already happened, so I just want to make it clear this is not intentional. And also, I like Raku. I've written Raku, but it's more than playing around. I was part of the Perl 6 development process a little bit. I was peripheral. I did write some of the things in NQP a long time ago. I really enjoyed it, but I just don't have as much of a background in Raku. So I also discovered through one of the reviewers that some of the information I had about Raku was incorrect. So that got corrected. There won't be as much Raku content in this talk. And it's just, I just don't have as much experience there, and I don't want to misrepresent it. I apologize. But you might wonder, how does a keynote get created? Because many times you want to talk at a conference, what do? You say, I'd like to talk. I want to talk about X, and they say, okay. A keynote's a little bit different. They reach out to me, they say, we'd like you to do a keynote, and I just don't pitch a normal talk. Instead, I say, what do you want me to talk about? And they say, we'd like you to talk about X, and I say, okay. And this time they said, we'd like you to do a retrospective of the past 25 years of conferences. Okay. Oh, shit. A lot of homework. A lot of homework. And more importantly, if I stand up here and I reel off 25 years of cities and people, that's going to be boring. So I got to figure out how to kind of make it interesting. So when I'm putting together a talk like this, ordinarily you got a topic, and it's going to be something, you just walk through your topic. I'm going to talk about this thing, your audience listens to your thing, you get done, they clap politely, maybe ask some questions. But for a keynote, it's a little bit different because you want to jazz it up a little bit. It's often a lot less technical. And what I do is I pick a theme. I try and find a theme for the talk. And this is, you can think of this as a metaphorical conceit, which is the structure you hang your talk on. So how am I going to structure this? What sort of theme am I going to get for this 25 years Perl conferences? And you also have to know your audience. The audience is very important when you give a talk. You need to know how well does your audience know your subject matter, and how do they feel about your subject matter. A while ago, I gave a talk where I knew the audience didn't know the topic well, but they were extremely hostile towards it. As a speaker, that's usually a bad position to be in, but I was really excited because that's really going to stretch my wings as a speaker, and I think I did a good job. It was fun. But in this case, you see? Thank you. Sorry, I have it. I live in France. So, where was I? Oh yes, in this particular case, you obviously know this topic fairly well. You may not know all the conferences, all the events, but you know the people, you know the subject matter, and you generally have positive thoughts about it, which makes my job as a speaker much, much easier. So I can have fun with that. And then the audience isn't just, you know, the Camellia spokesbook people, it's also the camel, the velociraptor, the onion, all sorts of different ideas and attitudes about these various technologies. But we're a community. We're just a group of people who are together sharing a common love for this technology. But that's not my theme. What's my theme? Okay, why Vegas? I was asking myself, okay, why Vegas? Maybe I can find my theme in Vegas. So, I'm going to talk to the Las Vegas Perl mongers. Okay, so what's common about Las Vegas and Perl? I wondered about that one. And in the Venn diagram of my trackpad not working, okay. In the Venn diagram of like Las Vegas and Perl, there's not exactly a lot of overlap there. What's Las Vegas known for? Gambling, prostitution, drugs, organized crime. And I'm kind of, alcohol. Okay, that's not my thing. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. All of us heard that. In fact, when I got off the plane at the Vegas airport, they were calling out the loudspeaker. Please remember, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Las Vegas is lexically scoped. Okay, that's not my thing. But I've done my own. And I realized Las Vegas fulfills the prophecy. It does. Because our great unknown prophet, Uri Gutman, back in 1999, wrote about the very first Perl conference, YAPSE. Fear and Loathing at YAPSE, obviously referring to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And you can find that out on yapse.org, America, previous years. A number of the links are dead. You got to hit archive.org. And it's a savage journey in the heart of a Swiss Army chainsaw. And I like how that photo's all grainy, almost like it's an old journalist shot or something like that. This fits perfectly with this. Now, as a professional speaker, I speak at a lot of public events. I speak at private events. Corporations hire me. Sometimes it's a client I'm working for. They'll bring me in for a day just to talk about stuff. The number one sin as a public speaker is clear. You do not read from your slides. Do not read from your slides. It is boring. You don't need to have slides up there because you can just give them the slides and read the talk. So I'm going to read from my slides. An excerpt from what Uri wrote. On Saturday, a fair number, 25 or so, crossed paths in the courtyard outside the conference center. We caravaned to the darkest cave we could find and proceeded to swill gallons of fine beer and scarf Moby-sized burritos and bushels of chips and salsa. Afterwards, we had a major civil war about deciding the next destination. My faction decided to keep the geekness of our experience alive while the rest of us weenied out and went to some artsy-fartsy place. Our gang of four hightailed to Pittsburgh's Geek Palace after a long and unintentional self-guided tour of Iron City's highways and byways. Don't attempt this at home. And as I read that excerpt, I thought, this is an excerpt of, it's an abomination. I mean, what happened to capitalization? What happened to, we have compound adjectives which needed to be hyphenated in order to avoid ambiguity, and it is an abomination that I bothered to edit this in the first place. It was actually perfect. And I read Uri's diary a couple of times, and there wasn't a lot of technical detail. This is about human stuff. It was about people, not about the technology. And I really liked that. And I thought, is this my theme? Okay, it's not quite gelling yet. So what theme? I'm still kind of stuck with this. Consider yourself lucky. I didn't go with quantum Bayesian mechanics as my theme, but it actually helped a bit. That and the glass of whiskey I was having at the time. You know, it'll be a recurring theme. I was reading a series of articles about quantum Bayesian mechanics, and it was really fascinating, because originally quantum mechanics was kind of epistemological in nature. What can we know? We can know a particle's momentum or its position, but not both at the same time. So epistemology, there's limits to our knowledge, and others have tried more of an ontological approach to this for an ontological approach to quantum mechanics. There is a reality underneath, such as Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation or the pilot wave theory, which makes its resurgence in popularity and then dies again. Quantum Bayesianism did something different. They're trying to reimagine some of the ideas from quantum mechanics. So what they're saying is that the important thing that we've had over the past century is agents measuring things. In human terms, people looking at stuff. And, okay, people's coming back. And I was reading that, I was thinking, yeah, people. Okay, I've got something here, but it's not quite there yet. And I'm still working on that. And then I remembered Isaac Asimov's Guide to the Bible. Oh, love that book. Published in the late 60s. First of all, if you are very religious, please be aware Dr. Asimov is an atheist. So in his Guide to the Bible, he's very clear about his position. So that might be offensive to some folks, and I don't mean for it to be intended that way. But what he did was very interesting. So, show of hands, how many people have heard of Cleopatra? Yeah, pretty much everyone. Not you, what? So pretty much everyone in the audience held up their hand. Cleopatra lived about the end time of the Old Testament. She is mentioned precisely 0 times in the Old Testament. And what Asimov did in this is he decided he was going to line up biblical history and secular history, because people who know biblical history often don't know secular history, people who know secular history often don't know biblical history. And it's published in the 60s, it's kind of outdated, it's a popular work, not a scholarly work. Now scholars generally say, well, they do rate it higher than, say, anything by certain popular authors I'm not going to go into right now. Jared Diamond, sorry. It's not a bad work, it's very fun to read, but he does have a very particular viewpoint, but that, I figured, is my theme. I've got the people, but lining up Perl history with non-Perl history. See where we line up. And I thought, okay, I can work with that. Now I've got something I can do. So I can start my talk. It was a long-winded preamble. 1999, the very first one. And that's where we had Larry. He gave the very first opening talk in 1999. This was at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, organized by Kevin Lenzo. And we had about 300 attendees, I believe, for that talk. A lot of this information might be vague because, again, if the information is not on the website, I was doing archive.org, digging through a lot of stuff. It was hard to pull that together. But that first YAPC was really a who's who of the Perl community, and many of these names we're still very familiar with. Larry Wall, Randall Schwartz, Mark Jason Dominus, John Orwan, R. Jeffrey Avery. Jeff, are you here? Are you here? What a dumb question. Elaine Ashton, Schomburg, Schwern, and of course, any list I give is going to be incomplete. And I just got to pick some names, go with it. There's no slight intended. And a who's who of Perl. PowerPoint suggested, hey, why don't you use this picture of Mount Rushmore? I thought, that's kind of cool, but I like Perl. Who's who in Perl? So I turned to ChatGPT and I said, ChatGPT, I want an image of Mount Rushmore with famous Perl personalities. And it was like, done! Here's an image of Larry Wall, Damien Conway, Randall Schwartz, and Henry Conway. I'm reasonably certain this is George Washington, Grizzly Adams, Stalin, and Hipster Lincoln. Does anyone know who Grizzly Adams is? Am I that old?
Yes.
Thank you! I was worried that one was going to lie there in Twitch. I wasn't sure. Books published that year. We had Mastering Algorithms of Perl, we had Perl Core Language, Little Black Book, Writing Apache Modules of Perl and C. And that year in history, we had the impeachment of Bill Clinton, where he was debating what the meaning of is, or was, then, yes. The bombing of Yugoslavia, Euros announced Napster created. Anyone remember Napster? And their subsequent lawsuits and stuff like that. Columbine Massacre, of course. And Y2K conspiracy theory. So at the time, this is the first year that I had encountered Perl. But I was working as a COBOL developer. Obviously, I wasn't doing much Y2K stuff. But there was this idiotic idea that geeks around the world have been plotting to make more money. As far as I know, the very first Y2K incident that I've been able to find was New York City in 1969, where they were calculating returns on 30-year investments. Oh, we have a problem because they were using 2 digits instead of 4 for the year. And once it became obvious the magnitude of the problem, they decided to ignore it for the next 30 years. So we're in a mad scramble to make this work, and everyone was like, oh, they're just doing this to make extra money. Well, so naturally I did what I had to do. I wrote a haiku. Is Y2K real? The problem's being solved by men who can't find dates. And I know there's 2 types of people in this audience right now. One, you're counting the syllables, and then there's 3 of you saying, that was a century, not a haiku, dude. Yeah, okay. 19100. Because back then, many times, even in Perl, you had a 2-digit year, and they would just concatenate the 19 at the front. That did show up a few times, but it wasn't that serious of a thing. But we did call the conference YAPC 19100, and that was again in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Carnegie Mellon University. And we also had YAPC Europe in London, England. So more stuff was beginning to happen there. We're starting to grow. People are liking the idea of these conferences. And again, list of great names: Larry Wall, Damien Conway, Nat Torkington, et cetera, et cetera. There's Mark Jason Dominus in his natural state. If you have been to his traveled as much as he has, or I have, or been to a lot of conferences, this is a perfectly understandable thing. The fact that you just get to sleep anywhere, I envy him for that. Where Damien Conway gave his very first quantum superpositions talk. It was that long ago, if you want to feel old. Books that year. We had Object-Oriented Perl, CGI Programming with Perl. One of the authors of that, Shishir Gundavaram, I've had a chance to chat with him recently. Very, very nice gentleman. That was a book that taught me CGI programming. Network Programming with Perl, Lincoln Stein. Elements of Programming with Perl, Programming with Perl, Dick, DBI. Alligator Descartes is the best pen name of all time. And Al Gore won the popular vote for the presidency, and we spent the next 8 years fighting climate change. Oh wait, no, that's going back to Hugh Everett's Many Worlds interpretation. My bad. We had Millennium celebrations, first crew on the ISS. I joined Perl monks with an ID of 17,000, and a mug was broken. And that's where you know your audience, because I give this talk anywhere else for whatever reason. I say mug broken, no one's going to know. You folks know. 2001, moving along. We have events in Montreal, Quebec, Amsterdam, YARPC 19101. Why is it called 19101? Because apparently they wanted to beat that joke to death. And YARPC was yet another Ruby Pro conference. They weren't associated with yet another society, but that was the name. There's the late David Adler at the Quebec conference. And once again, an incomplete list. Larry Wall, Damien Conway, Kevin Lenzo, Abigail, who's right over there. You're still with us, yay.
I've been to all of them.
Very impressive. He just said he's been to all of them.
Only in North America.
Kurosawa Sanathe, Matt Torkington, Adam Turoff, Dominus again, Ingi, who's also here. I don't know if Ingi, where are you? YAML script guy. Go talk to him about that. He'd love to work destructuring in Perl. Cool stuff. Jeff, over there. Gary Gutman, the unexpected prophet. Scott, the Burkhard, Schwern. You can't see it easily from this particular photograph, but you can notice that Damien has red eyes and an upside-down apple. Obviously a sign of demonic possession. Which explains why he releases so many beautiful, powerful modules that aren't quite ready for production. Sorry, Damien. But, glass houses and all that, I've done that quite a few times too, so I can't take him to task for that. Books, we have Data Munching with Perl, Beginning Perl for Bioinformatics and Professional Perl Programming. Prior to this time, I had been working on Prime Mini computers, Apple's, Z machines, basically mainframes. I've been working in a variety of environments, but not Unix, Linux type of environment for the most part. I didn't have a lot of experience with it. And Data Munching with Perl, when I'm seeing them, they're not writing stuff to file, they're printing it to standard out and then like redirecting it or typing it or whatever, and I'm seeing all these weird command line things, and I'm finally beginning to get an inkling of the power that is available to me. That book really changed my understanding, appreciation of what can be done here. So I really appreciate that. So Dave, if you're watching, thank you. And I want to apologize for the next slide. One of my reviewers said I should not use the photo. It's important photo. And there's a very particular reason why I use this photo. That was September 11th. We all know, 3,000 dead, 25,000 injuries, war in Afghanistan. I chose this particular photograph because the tower that's smoking is the North Tower. I worked for a company called Onsite Technology at that time. And we had basically cornered much of the outdoor sporting goods industry. And we were building a large e-commerce system for them. And we were turning away clients. Most of our money was getting financed by a company in that North Tower. And there was a gentleman in that tower. I'm going to call him Bob. We hated Bob. He was a Windows system administrator. He hated Perl. And every time we rolled out a new version of our software for them, this was the days before containerization, we give them a long list of instructions of here's how you install the software, here's how you install additional software to go with it, here's database change management, all this stuff. And he got it wrong every time. He would do things in the wrong order, he'd skip steps, or he knew better than us, so he'd take shortcuts, and the site wouldn't come up properly, and then he'd tell the company, these guys don't know what they're doing. We hated Bob with passion. You screwed up at work, you pulled a bomb, didn't you? And September 11th, he's in that North Tower. We loved Bob at that point. We were just all praying for him to get out. That's what it took for us to remember that the technology doesn't mean shit. It's the people. It's humanity. We forget that so often. It's so easy to get caught up in our little games. It's the people who matter. And I had to spend the next week reading through news reports to provide them to the client who survived, to provide to their clients, to let them know everything that was going on. I spent an entire week reading about people making their last phone calls to their loved ones. It was hard. As far as we know, only one person from that particular client did not make it out. But they obviously suffered quite a bit. We lost all of our income. We went bankrupt. And that's enough of that. It was a somber moment, but it's such an important moment, I couldn't skip it because this was big. 2002. We have events in St. Louis and in Munich. Got to go to Munich sometime. Lovely place. Once again, a lot of great names. That Mike? I might have copied that from the previous year, but I think it's the same list of people if I got that wrong. Oops. Books, we had Perl Pocket Reference. Perl and LWP, Extending and Embedding Perl, Mastering Cruelty Kit. Perl Pocket Reference, thanks to Elliot. I don't know where Elliot is. Elliot's right over there. He gave me a copy of that in French just yesterday. I was so happy with that. So I've got a little copy of that in my bag now. Yay. And that year in history, we had the aftermath of 7/11, September 11th. Aftermath of 7/11. I wonder what that would be. I can riff on that at some point. Military forces authorized against Iraq. We had the DC Beltway sniper, 10 deaths. And then Mars Odyssey begins mapping Mars. I love space, so I care about that. So I'm trying to figure out whether Mars Odyssey has googly eyes on it. But it does. Kind of gives it some personality there. 2003. 4 events that year that I'm aware of. If I missed some, I apologize. We got Florida, Ontario, Paris, France, Haifa, Israel. That's the port in Haifa, in case you're curious. And once again, we have tons of fairly well-known people who attended these events. When I put the list, I'm usually putting the list for the American conference because that's what I can easily find. You see Allison on there. Allison, I actually worked for her for a while. She was a great boss. But there's 2 names with red asterisks beside them that I want to point out in particular. One's David Wheeler. Anyone here use AppSkitch for database change management? Okay, a few names. He's the author of that. I was working for him for a while, for a company called Kinetico. I remember going down to the hospital. I had a medical issue I had to deal with, and when I went to pay, they said, no, your medical insurance covers everything. I had no copay, I had no deductible or anything like that. And I went to David, and I said, you guys messed up my insurance. I don't have to pay anything. And he said, no, that's the way it should be. It should be a right. So he actually was paying a lot more money to take care of me properly. And he and I are friends to this day. Sometimes they come out, give his wife a visit, which is lovely. Michel Rodriguez, that was a funny incident. He wrote XML Twig, if you folks know him. If you're familiar with that module, it's not recommended anymore. You can buy Michel. So I was living on the west coast of France at the time, and Michel lives in Italy, and he was going to be in the area, so we're emailing, and so he's going to come by with his teenage son, and I toss a huge side of beef on the barbecue, way too much food for us, but that's fine, because the next day I'm going to have my nice beef brisket tacos to enjoy. His son ate all of it. This skinny little kid just chowing down. It was like, you know, a lawnmower going through the grass. And he was just enjoying it. But I was happy because he was enjoying it, and it made me feel good. It was just a lovely little moment to remember these friends that we make over the years. I was happy about that. By the way, Jeff, that was the first year, I believe, that he did the lightning talks, so basically he stole the gong.
And for books this year, we had Perl 6 Essentials by Allison Randall, Dan Sigalski, and Leopold Tusch. I actually had a copy of this book, and it was absolutely delightful. And 2003, the year in history, we had the invasion of Iraq. The Human Genome Project was finally completed, largely with the help of Perl, and the final Lord of the Rings film was released, inexplicably starring our own Larry Wall. Okay, let's stop for a moment. I've been going through the Perl events, the Perl conferences, YAPCs, year by year, and you're probably wondering, am I going to do this for every single year? Let's be honest, that's going to get very boring very fast. It's probably already boring, so I've got to stop that. Part of what I did was I threw together this map of major Perl events all around the world so I could see where they're grouped, try to get a better idea of how I was going to continue the rest of this talk to make it a little bit more interesting. And if you're interested, you can go out to bit.ly/Perl-events and edit this map for yourself. You need a Google account. I've opened it up for editing for everyone. This has major Perl events, but I didn't include workshops, toolchain summits, or anything else like that. So if you'd like to go out there and add to this map, I would be delighted. Please, feel free. I absolutely love the word shibboleth. One of the modern meanings of the word shibboleth is a word which, when mispronounced, identifies you as a member of the outgroup, or an outsider, an other, someone else. And part of the reason why I love the word is apparently if you don't speak Hebrew, you're mispronouncing it. I'm mispronouncing it, you're mispronouncing it. It's just a delightful irony. For this particular slide, if you're a member of the outgroup, if you're not a Perl developer, there's a very good chance this is gibberish to you. You have no idea what this means. If you are a Perl developer, all of you are sitting down right now trying to figure out if this is a valid regular expression. In 2004, we had events in Buffalo, New York, Taipei, Taiwan, Belfast, Ireland. That one was rather interesting. Jeff was going over there to run the lightning talks. Unfortunately, the gong was too large, so he had to get another gong, which was much smaller. That's the one that he uses today for the lightning talks still, and he could transport that one to Belfast. And I believe he's on his 4th stand for that gong. So here it is, 20 years later, and we're still using the same gong for that. Also, there was Melbourne, Australia. O'Reilly sponsored Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban at IMAX. We have various 5/8 versions of Pearl released, and George W. Bush defeated John Kerry for the presidential election in 2004. For 2005, we had events in Toronto, Canada, Taipei, Taiwan, Braga, Portugal. We had a scavenger hunt in downtown Toronto. I wasn't there for that, and I wish I knew what had happened. It sounds like it was rather interesting. And also there was Hurricane Katrina, $125 billion in damages, much of that to New Orleans in Louisiana. And for 2005 books, we had Higher Order Pearl by Mark Jason Dominus and Pearl Best Practices by Damian Conway. Higher Order Pearl was really a fantastic book, and I enjoyed the parser, and I used that to start writing a new parser to parse the tap format for Test Harness. And eventually it worked so well, I put a little wrapper around that, started creating a command line utility, and people started using that in favor of Test Harness 2.64, which was out there, which Andy Lester had the thankless task of actually maintaining that project, but he was handed it, and it had so many limitations to its architecture, he couldn't fix the issues with it. So he suggested that my new tool be upgraded to become the new Test Harness. So I got Eric Wilhelm and Andy Armstrong together, and we managed to push out a new Test Harness which resolved all of the bugs which were in the existing Test Harness, but wasn't quite what we were looking for. We'll come back to that later. In 2006, we had Pearl events in Chicago, Illinois, Birmingham, UK, Porto Alegre, Brazil. That's the image you see on the slide. Tokyo, Japan. We had the final Pearl conference in Melbourne, Australia. I believe they transferred to the Open Source Development Conference. And I happened to move to the UK in the middle of that year. And in Palestine, Hamas, running as a moderate pro-democracy party, won the election, and then they never permitted another election in Palestine. A rather curious thing. For 2007, we had events in Houston, Texas, Vienna, Austria, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Tokyo, Japan. Pearl 510 was released, and the first iPhone was unveiled. It's almost hard to imagine a world today where the iPhone didn't exist.
2008, Chicago, Illinois, Copenhagen, Denmark. I was at that conference. I really enjoyed that event. Moscow, Russia, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Tokyo, Japan, and Barack Obama got elected. That was interesting. In 2008, I was working for the BBC in the White City in London, and the day after he got elected, I walked into the offices, huge open plan offices, and I'm the American telling the Brits what they're watching on television. It was odd. And they looked up and they just started cheering and clapping. It was a very surreal moment. Very fascinating. I felt very uncomfortable with that. But Copenhagen, Denmark, I screwed up. Because prior to that, at the end of conferences, they often announce where the next conference is going to be. And several European cities had been vying to have the 10th anniversary of the YAPC conference. Even though it started in 2009, they didn't start in Europe until 2010, but they were vying for this. And Lisbon, Portugal sent out an email to a bunch of Pearl developers saying, hey, can you make a little video saying why the next YAPC has to be held in Lisbon, Portugal? I misread the brief. You're supposed to have like 1 or 2 sentences. I thought they wanted a full video. Oh, no, come on. Is there something we can do about the sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, my volume's maxed out right now.
Yeah, I got you.
Cheers. Oh, is that great?
Go ahead. Go for it.
Hi folks, I'm Curtis Poe, better known as Ovid, and I'm here to tell you why the next European YAPC needs to be held in Lisbon, Portugal.
Hi, Curtis. What are you up to? I'm trying to record a video game.
What? Why don't you just stand at your computer again? No, I have a webcam. You see this light up here?
That's a webcam.
Yeah.
Are we naked?
No! This is my brother Greg.
And this is my brother Curtis.
Different mothers.
Same father.
Lamentably.
They're meant to be. What's that?
It means we have the same father.
Oh. So what do you really do?
I'm recording a video explaining why Lisbon, Portugal needs to host the next YAMC.
Yahtzee. What, the game with 5 dice?
It's a tech conference, we do stuff.
So, well, like PHP.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, bro, how do you know about PHP anyway?
I took the uni.
Really?
Yeah, man. Next week, right?
Are you serious?
Yeah, stick with acid. Way safer.
You mean PCP, right?
Yeah, crazy dangerous.
You see, folks, this is why we have to have the next YAPC in Lisbon. My brother is not allowed back in the country.
Again, we discussed this. Not my fault. I didn't know it was a pastry.
I don't want to know. Please, we have to have the next one in Lisbon. I'll be safe there.
So, we make it yet?
Please?
We had a lot of fun making that, even though it was far longer than what they were expecting. But they won the conference for the next year in Lisbon. So the 10th anniversary, Carnegie Mellon University, Lisbon, Portugal, Moscow, Russia, Porto Alegre, Brazil, Tokyo, Japan, the H1N1 swine flu global pandemic that no one remembers anymore, because, well, obviously we know why that was forgotten. The people in the photo from left to right at the Portugal conference, friends of mine, Aristotle Pegasus, Andy Armstrong, the gentleman who released Test Harness, wonderful, brilliant man, Bingos, and Barbie. We had a lot of fun at that conference. But the Test Harness today has tons of bugs because modern needs swamp everything. And it is, even though we released it with no bugs whatsoever, a lot of these are just hard to fix. The architecture's not there. Anyone who wants to step up to the plate, there's a new challenge waiting for you. Now, can I do 10 years and make it quick and not bore people to death? So Perl, year by year, every year we get a major release. There was a time in there that we toyed with calling the language Perl 5, and then the version number was what people would think is the minor version number in semantic versioning. So 520 Perl, 5, version 22, version 24, version 26. They never quite caught on. No one understood that. It was confusing for folks, but we were getting a major release out every year, right before the summer, like clockwork. So it was great. I apologize for Raku. I tried to find a Raku hist similar to a Perl hist. It wasn't there. I tried to dig some information, and I found some contradictory stuff, and I realized after a while, particularly after I got some correction on some of the information that I thought was correct, that I was going to do it a disservice, and I apologize. But these are two of the major events. But let's talk about the world really quick. We had the Arab Spring protests in 2010. Twitter really helped with that, showed the power of the internet. And it's hard to believe it was 14 years ago. Osama bin Laden was killed, Occupy Wall Street, Barack Obama gets reelected, Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting, Pope Benedict resigns, Pope Francis is elected, Russia annexes Crimea, West African Ebola virus epidemic, same-sex marriage legalized in the United States, the Paris Agreement on climate change is signed, and in 2016, that was particularly interesting. One, UK voted no on Brexit. Why did you do that, folks? And then Hillary Clinton wins the popular vote for the US presidency. Yeah, you know what happens there. We had the Me Too movement next year, massive hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. In 2008, deadly California wildfires. And to cap off this amazing decade, COVID-19 begins. Just to really tell us what nature thought of us at that point. Perl's a little bit different. Matt Trout in 2010, he's the one who popularized the term velociraptor. So that's where that comes from, if you're not familiar with it. 2014, last South American conference was held. 2015, Larry declares Perl 6 production ready at FOSDEM. That was such a wonderful moment. It was great to see. YAPC got renamed to the Perl Conference, and, Pete described a little bit about what happened, but basically, Oscar, was there. O'Reilly hadn't been using the name, and we kind of looked at them and said, hey, you gonna eat that? And so, we're the Perl Conference again. Well, we're briefly. And then, last Russian conference was the next year. 2019, Perl 6 got renamed to Raku. Oh, and I forgot to mention 2018, 6D Diwali was released. That was a major event for Raku. But about that rename, That was actually first mentioned in 2009, James Fuller, but he was mentioning it for a release, not the name of the programming language itself, because no one had the idea of changing it from Perl 6 to anything else. Then in 2018, I know Elizabeth Tyson, she'd been talking with Larry, trying to get him to be more open to the idea of rename. And then he suggests the name Raku. Elizabeth said Amelia. Damien comes back and says, well, I like Raku, and gives a long explanation. Liz agrees. Larry Wall approved the change. And that was so important for both communities. Everyone on the inside, we knew about the problems this was causing. Everyone on the outside was like, what? Because Perl 6 is obviously the upgrade to Perl 5. I know that I am not the only consulting firm who lost business because we go into a company and the company would say, no, we're not doing anything with Perl, we're waiting for the upgrade to Perl 6 before we do major work. And I would explain to them that Perl 6 is not the successor to Perl 5. It's a sister language, kind of the way C# is a sister language to Java. There's not a direct upgrade path. It doesn't work that way. And then they'd come back a little while later, yeah, we're waiting for the upgrade to Perl 6. They didn't get it. So this was hurting Perl 5. It was hurting Raku also, because I saw a number of times online, people were saying, I'm not going to touch a language with Perl in its name. Raku needed that break. Raku needed a fresh start without being held back by the baggage of Perl. Not everyone likes that, but I think it was a good thing for both communities. So, next 4 years, this one's going to be a little bit easier. So, we again have a major release every year, right before the summer, or during the summer sometimes. So 5.40 was released just a few days ago on the 9th. For the Karina project, we've now added the reader attribute to it. Karina's kind of slowed down because Paul, who's working on this, is doing a lot of yak shaving with some other things before he can get that handled correctly. But for the world, 2020, COVID-19 lockdown. That's why I have my COVID hair. Most of you probably know me from much shorter hair prior to that. Brexit actually happened. We had Black Lives Matter. Biden defeats Trump. Then we have COVID-19 vaccines coming out in 2021. U.S. rejoins the Paris Agreement. 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. James Webb Space Telescope was released. A little bright bit of hope there. I was really happy to see that. I love space. Global inflation rates soared. Massive protests on our end. The global inflation rates really fascinate the heck out of me. So I'll just talk about President Emmanuel Macron in France. He has the political charisma of a dead puppy. I like the guy. He's a moderate. We say ni gauche ni droite, neither left nor right. He's moderate. He was previously a finance minister. He's a brilliant man. He doesn't connect with people well, however, and this is unfortunate. He's not doing a great job of getting his message across, and he has made some serious mistakes. But he's been a pretty good president. But one of the things the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest movement, has been in France, has been protesting is a horrible inflation rate in France. Except A, it's a global phenomenon. Macron didn't cause this. And B, France had some of the lowest inflation rates in Europe. And they were still protesting. Macron has actually done, despite his missteps, a good job. But people they fall into their tribes and they attack without really paying attention to the entire situation. It's very frustrating. I might have seen something about inflation rates happening, discussions happening in other countries, but I won't go there. 2024, COVID-19 pandemic starts to subside, and just to make up for it, we start having more extreme weather events, droughts, sea level rise, and then AI everything. Oh, God, give it. Major Perl events happening during this time. Sawyer announces a Perl 7 project in 2020, and then he resigns due to abuse over that in 2021. Sorry, I don't want to moralize, but we didn't need to have that happen. I know a number of folks in the Perl community, who were in the Perl community, very major names, who many of you would know, who are no longer in the Perl community, and they told me directly it's because of the abuse. He's not the first pumpkin to back out because of the abuse. Attacking our best and brightest is not the best and brightest strategy we can have. We can be nice people. Why is it that hard to be nice to someone? Why do we have to make fun of others, other languages, other people, other ideas? Why do we have to be abusive? It makes me very sad. And that's all I'll say about it. That's enough, but it means a lot to me. 5/3/8/2023, the initial Carina work started to get into the Perl core. That's been fun. Chris, where are you? So Chris on Friday is going to be having a class where he's going to be talking about building a roguelike system in Perl, basically creating a game in Perl, and he's going to be using Carina for it. I think he still has some slots open, so definitely sign up if you can. And then Perl 7, we don't know when that's going to come out. I truly believe we might have had Perl 7 already if it weren't for the events happening around Sawyer. I don't mean that it would have been what Sawyer envisioned, but I think we could have had a more productive discussion rather than the abuse that got rolled around. But I think we can have Perl 7 later, I just don't know when. The most dangerous game is actually predicting the future. And I'm not going to go there too much, so I'll go there. Next 25 years, I can't go there because it's just too hard. So I don't know when Perl 7 will be released. There's been some discussion with the Perl Steering Council, other groups, on how are we going to get, not Steering Council, but anyway. In P5P, there's been some discussion of how Perl 7 is going to get out there, what it might contain, but there's more work which needs to be done in order to get a major release. Perl 5, when it came out, offered packages, references, objects, modules, lexically scoped variables, mini Las Vegases, and it made it easier to build big systems because that was necessary. But I work on big systems. It ain't easy enough. Perl 6 was supposed to continue that, but obviously it became Raku. It's not our upgrade path. I think Perl 6 is probably a better way of building those big systems, but Perl 5, that doesn't mean we can't do better. And I think we need to have more things for that in order for Perl 7 to really continue the promise of Perl 5. But I think it would be fantastic for marketing, for letting people know we are still around, we're still around. Perl's become much easier to use. We've got signatures, module true. Now with the latest versions, you don't have to end a module with a magic true value like a 1 at the end anymore. That little nit has gone away. We have true booleans from the built-in namespace, which is that really solves a lot of problems. Try-catch, also available in the built-in namespace, I believe. Carina, of course, we're working on that, the new version of object-oriented programming. Optional chaining. I believe Vish is working on that. So Carina, if you're not familiar with it, there's the old style of programming, the original style of programming, OOP, where you've got to wire everything together manually, which is all sorts of scope for bugs. There's the exact same code in Carina. With the exception of the body of the method, it's all declarative code. Very simple, very easy to read. Quite often, if you get it wrong, it won't even compile. So it's much nicer, much easier. And in 540, or even 538, that'll work right now. Optional chaining. Visha's working on this, and I can't wait to get that in there because the code on the left can be rewritten as the code on the right. Many other languages offer this. It's being implemented. I don't know when it'll be ready. That is one of the things that makes the code more readable, more maintainable, because it's easy to get the code on the left wrong. So, yes, I really want to see that. But is there going to be a Perl Renaissance? I don't think so, but newer Perl developers, companies are talking about they're hiring them, and these new developers, young developers, they haven't heard of Perl. Which means they haven't heard Perl is dead, or read only, or write only, or whatever. They don't have a lot of the negative baggage. There's an opportunity there, but we need Perl to be easier to use. And if Perl 7 is going to come out, it's got to be easier to use. It's got to have a simplified syntax in many ways. I don't know if we're going to get there. But didn't want to do this, but I'm talking about the next 25 years. We've got to talk about the elephant in the room. But I've been doing a lot of work with AI in the past year. Not just reading about it, not just listening to podcasts, but actually working with it, working with clients with this. Part of the reason why I'm doing more Python now, a lot of Python Perl crossover and stuff like that. And the thing is, we just don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the hard limits are. No one knows what the hard limits are. And if they say they know, they're lying. There's so many different ways we can go with this. Yeah, when I look at people who really, really know how to build these large-scale frontier models, they're kicking around the idea that, yes, programming will end in X number of years. We don't know the value of X. I hear 10 is bandied about quite a bit.
Christmas,
yes, thank you. Christmas Day, you all lose your jobs. Right now, we're seeing job market transformation, not collapse, but you need to learn prompt engineering. Trust me, it is much more of a thing than you think. There's tons of different frameworks for different ways of approaching this. There's APE, there's RACIF, tons of others. You can talk to me about that later. Prompt engineering is a discipline. It is a new discipline. It's kind of like an alchemy, not a science. It's an alchemy where the rules of the universe are changing every day, every week, so it's hard to keep up. But AI, people are getting upset because they promised me C3PO, but they gave me Clippy with a master's degree in creative writing. Actually, no, that's not quite what happened. There's real value being produced with this right now if you reset your expectations. There's a lot of hype around AI, and a lot of companies are saying things which they probably shouldn't be saying, but the companies producing the foundation models have been fairly responsible in their promises, not necessarily in like safety or other areas, but they're not trying to overpromise. They're setting reasonable expectations. It's the clickbait headlines which are confusing people. This is providing real value right now. It's providing real value for my clients. I solved a problem recently where the old way of sending out the data to have someone munge it would have cost me a minimum of $50,000 in several weeks of waiting for it. And I just ran it through the OpenAI API with some code that I wrote. And in about 5 hours at a cost of less than $4, I had my results. I didn't need perfect. I needed good enough for a spike proof of concept, which would have been killed prior to this. It's really providing value. If you think it's not providing value, some people think that. Show of hands, how many people know who TSMC is? Okay, a few, not many. Let's try this again. How many of you know who NVIDIA is? Okay, a lot more hands. Actually, no, let me rephrase that question. How many of you know that NVIDIA manufactures GPUs? Yeah, a lot of hands. You're all wrong. If you held it around to they're producing GPUs, you're all wrong. Everyone gets this wrong. I do trick questions. I'm sorry, but I had to do that. TSMC produces their GPUs. They just design them. They're the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. And in 2022, Berkshire Hathaway acquired a $4.1 billion stake in this company. And they sold most of that stake just a few months later because of the risk of war. Biden administration is now passed a ruling that China cannot have the most powerful GPUs available for driving these AIs. So China is stuck. They want those GPUs. They're trying to smuggle them in. Their companies are now effectively getting a de facto subsidy because they're buying more from their own companies, saying you've got to make better GPUs. This is so important that they're talking about, well, they're talking about war. China is actually dealing with this. Taiwan has long been a thorn in their side. They're saying it's a rogue province. They're having war games out there. They've been very explicit. The intent of this is to explore how we can successfully invade and take back our rogue province. And everyone on the outside knows what's going on. This is about the GPUs, which TSMC is producing, which are no longer being available for Taiwan. And if anyone thinks that the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, just woke up one morning and read a Reddit article and said, oh, I better invade Taiwan, no. This is how serious this is. This is providing real value that the early days of the internet did not. This is serious, so we need to take this seriously. Do pay attention to it. Don't blow it off. So, artificial intelligence, we don't have many AI libraries. OpenAPI client, OpenAI is one that Nelson Fraz worked on. I'm co-maintainer of. This particular one, I'm trying to write a cleaner front end because that's too low level, but you can get access to all of the OpenAI API with that. We just don't have enough in Perl. But what's next? Going up from 5.5 to 5.40, we've had over 200 major features. Perl is so much better than it was today. And while the truth is, while we were a Velociraptor, today we're more of a coelacanth. Coelacanths are still around. Yeah. Don't forget that. So we're relatively well paid compared to many other developers. We're kind of a close-knit family. I know many of you better than I know my neighbors, which is embarrassing. But you are my family. And I love what you guys have given me over the past couple of decades. I don't know, in the face of global existential socio-economic change, what's going to happen. No one does. AI is throwing everything out of whack. It's hard to say, but I can still hack on Perl, and I love it. And I'm proud to call myself just another Perl hacker. But on that somber note, I don't want to end there, because that's maybe not as happy as you like. For that promo, Greg and I actually didn't get it right the first try. No surprise. You do a lot of practice for stuff like that. Ordinarily, I don't like to use profanity in a talk, but I'm going to show you the outtakes. I apologize in advance because there is some profanity.
Hi folks, I'm Curtis Poe, better known as Ovid, and I'm here to tell you why next YAPC So hopefully that's picking up my voice a little bit better. Yeah. Except we got a fucking echo. No. Let me turn the goddamn sound up.
You goddamn count up there.
Hi folks, I'm Curtis Poe, and I'm here to... Am I?
Hi, Curtis. What are you doing?
I have no fucking idea. Hi folks, I'm Curtis Poe, better known as Ovid, and I'm here to tell you why the next YAPC meeting needs to be held in Lisbon, Portugal. No, that's a webcam. You see this light up here?
That's a webcam. Are we naked?
No! Well, what's my line?
What's my line should be my motto. Thank you, folks, very much.